the Ring Girl, and I'm like, all right, I got to go back up and read that. So your shares and your marketing, it's always catching my eye, and I definitely want to have you on and talk with you about it. Your shows look awesome, so I definitely wanted to get you on here and
Absolutely, and
spread
we,
the
we
word.
we need to talk. You always have talented guys. I'd love to if you got guys that are ready, we'll talk. I think we're scheduled for a show in September again. So we already have the arena reserved, but I think I may try to slide a show in. We did one. Our first one was 18 months ago. It was pretty successful. Me and a friend of mine that knows the music business did a thing called Brawlapalooza, and it's essentially where we take 3 or 4 bands and take an afternoon to do it, where you get some live music for a few hours, and then we finish off with a little mini card of 5 MMA fights. And I'll tell you what, it was a blast. We think we're going to try to do it again in July of this year, but love to have some of your people, because you always have some well-trained guys that are welcome in our cage anytime.
Was that the one that was at the fair? Was it
Yes.
outdoors? Yeah, that might have been the last one. That was the one where Derek Brennan headlined.
Yes. Yep. Derek's now, and Derek's going to be at the show. Derek just came back from training with American Top Team. He's been down there for 14 months. And again, you work around fighters. It's tough. There's a guy hugely talented. He's just waiting for the right break. That kid at 145 will take the UFC by storm. He's going to be at the event. He is now. He started on my cards, amateur cards. He held the Victory 145 belt before he turned pro. He held that belt for about a year and a half. He's fought on my pro cards, on the ones that I've done. He's now 6-0 as a pro, and hugely talented. And there's some conversation. There's a camp in Colorado or Jackson Wink in New Mexico that he's probably at the end of the summer going to be going to work with one of those camps.
Oh, that's awesome. Now the one in Colorado, is that the Elevation where
Yes.
Dillashaw went off to?
Yes. Yep. And he pretty much has an open invitation to work with either one of those camps. So he's deciding where he wants to head.
Wow, that's awesome. What an opportunity.
Yep. And again, he's got all the talent, but still a little frustrating with the business at the larger end. I mean, the UFC certainly runs it like a business. It has to be profitable. But a lot of these guys, it's not about talent. Sometimes it's about who they've got contracted, how many fights they have left on their contract. And right now, the 145 is a stacked division. They're deep, even talent-wise. I mean, I'll tell you right now, Derek would step right in there and be one of the most talented guys they have at 145. But if they've got contracts written for 60 guys in the 145, they're not gonna open up a spot for another one until some of those run out. And that's the business end of it. That's frustrating sometimes. So here you got a guy kind of standing, waiting in the wings, waiting for his big break, just waiting for guys' contracts to run out, and that's tough. And in this sport, you got to be active. So every fight on a smaller card, you run the risk of an injury and ruining your opportunity to the big show. So, and it's a tough thing to juggle.
And that 145 division right now is
That's tough.
like it's
And
almost the most.
easy.
It's almost the most
And have some
entertaining.
conversation about dropping to 135 because it is a tough division right now.
Yeah, and nobody's going anywhere because what's his name's he's not fighting in his division. So that
Right.
with them doing the interim title and everything, which it's a little bit frustrating. It's still a great fight.
I'll be honest with you, I am a McGregor fan because I think that he's opening the opportunity for guys to get some bigger paydays, which is well deserved. With the revenue that the UFC is bringing in, they need to spread some of that wealth to some of the guys bringing it in. I think he's shined a light on that, but that being said, what it's doing to the business, the way they've handled this whole last thing, it hurts guys like Derek waiting there to get in for sure. You got to trust in the step away from the WWE fans that sometimes I think the UFC caters to, and cater to the true fans, the guys that know boxing, that know MMA, and just want to see the really talented guys compete against each other. Put some of the sideshow away. Let us see the talent.
Yeah, and they do that sometimes. And for a while there, I was always surprised where, I'm like, oh wow, they're making that matchup. Like they're not going to wait until the tension builds anymore. They get the matchups together. It just seems like right now in this particular division, it's it's almost like gridlock. But I figure we're gonna watch anyway, so might as well just watch it unfold. So
yeah, I mean, I got to be honest with you. I almost stopped watching. Again, not more power to whoever his press agent was or not, but when Sage has kind of disappeared, the 19-year-old kid that Dana kind of took under his wing because he thought he could sell a bunch of pay-per-views off him. There's true silliness, and off watching that kid perform, my son included, I could name 10 guys between the ages of 18 and 22 that are better, that would deserve a bigger shot, and they know they're not ready. But, if you've got the right build and the marketing tool behind you, that stuff is kind of frustrating. That always reeks of professional wrestling to me. So, and you can see, if you obviously you're a fight fan and go online and read some, I think that I'm not the only one. I think people are pretty frustrated with that approach. Go back to the pre-Don King days of boxing when you just had, badass guys in there that wanted to get in there to prove that they were the best in the world. That's really what I want to see MMA. Show me the best MMA talent in the world. Not the biggest draw, the biggest money maker. Show me the best talent.
I have heard this before, that they're basically a marketing company that puts on fights, and I think that's pretty appropriate because sometimes they do these things like Sage. He has a lot of history where he was like the first kid on the first 12-year-old or something on the cover of Black Belt magazine, and he got in and he looked pretty impressive. So they're either going to say, well, we're geniuses for discovering him, or they're going to say, no, mixed martial arts is like the new revolution in martial arts, and it's going to beat traditional karate. So bringing him in, I can see why, because they're going to play it whichever way is better for them.
Right, but when I look at stuff like that, and then I've worked with talented guys like Derek Brennan, Jake Bones, another one. Jake's a kid that started on my cards and has gone pro now, and he's really got his act together and doing a fabulous job. When I see fights like that on a card, and it's frustrating to me being close to the business and looking at it and going, my God, you've got this guy on this card, and I got these two guys sitting next to me that deserve it so much more. And knowing that on a much bigger scale, that's just me being selfish with guys that I work with, but fully well aware of that story can be told hundreds and hundreds of times coast to coast, because there's talent. There's talent everywhere in the sport right now.
You think the sport's still pretty wide open, that there's another promotion could take over the UFC or overtake the UFC?
The potential's there, but again, it takes money to make the money that you need to do it. And I don't know who's one was. I thought Bellator, a couple of years ago, was in a prime spot to do that, and then they kind of veered off, and we're doing these Kimbo, day 5,000 fights, and rehashing Ken Shamrock, and I know they're drawing viewership, but it just lends an air of hokiness to it, and they're certainly not going to overtake them putting on fights like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they're going to eventually move away from fights like that, and I hope that they do. But There's something about it where I'm gonna watch it anyway.
As frustrating as I'd be lying if I didn't say didn't sit there and watch it, and hate myself for doing it, but I watch.
Well, I'll tell you, I laughed at the TV during that entire fight, and then when I heard that the guy had a real heart attack, I did feel bad, but it was so comical.
But he shouldn't have been in there in the first place. What kind of medical screening did they get him through? It really didn't. It looked like neither one of them. I looked at my son and said, these guys must have talked before and just said, let's walk away with a payday. Because it didn't look like neither one of them spent any time with cardio. They couldn't have.
Yeah, I agree. And Kimbo, I've seen him perform. Not great, but I've seen him in a 3-round fight before. Where he's got his hands on his. There's that GIF out there where as soon as the ref puts his hand in between them, like him and his opponent, they both go to both hands on both knees. And but he's fought better than that before, so I think it's gonna it was a payday for them. It was drawing viewers, but the thing that kind of bothered me about that particular card was there was no real star of that. It was just like, oh, that fight sucked and that fight sucked. And
yeah, exactly.
There was no superstar. Like if they would have had Pitbull fight on that card, and I can't even remember if he did or if he didn't, but the fact that I can't remember is a bad thing for them for that particular show.
Yeah, it was not a stellar card by any means. Yeah, I don't know that there's any promotion out there right now, I'm a big Glory fan too. As far as Muay Thai was going, I was almost hoping that Glory would expand into MMA, but again, the business end of it, Bellator, because of their deal with Spike TV, your Glory was coming every Friday night and getting to it and building up some momentum, and behind Glory owners' backs, the owners of Bellator went to Spike and said, "Oh, we'll do a Muay Thai promotion," and and they pushed them off. Now Glory doesn't have that mainstream, and I was looking for Glory to expand and step out of their comfort zone and start doing some MMA shows, because I'll tell you what, they do their Muay Thai shows properly, and they were doing a good job with those. I mean, they were holding tournaments. Their guys fighting on the undercard were making 3 times what UFC MMA fighters were making.
Oh, that's crazy.
Yep, on Muay Thai cards.
They're on Fight Pass now.
Yeah, they moved to Fight Pass on it. But I don't know how. I don't think they're going to get the same crowd on Fight Pass as they were getting on Spike.
Oh yeah, I think weren't they on ESPN at some point too?
Well, I don't think they ever made it to. After they got booted from Spike, it looked like ESPN was looking at them, but something happened there, and that fell through, and that's what I heard. They ended up being on Fight Pass. So I don't know. There's at least organizational wise, and at least the show that as a fan I was watching, I couldn't help but feel like, damn, if these guys made a run at it, here's maybe some guys that got their act together that could really put a challenge into the UFC right now. I think you're going to see guys getting smarter too on it. You're gonna see guys entering into it being free agents and not get locked into contracts with the UFC. Not unless they start paying better. I mean, everybody looks at the McGregor who has millions in the bank now because of the deal he worked, but the UFC holds that carrot out there to all these guys that'll never get to that level. They get their money from the buys. They get a percentage of the pay-per-view buys. But McGregor and there's only a couple of guys that have ever had the buys. The George St. Pierre's, Chuck Liddell's, Tito Ortiz's. I mean, you can count them on 2 hands the number of guys since the birth of the UFC that have been able to negotiate that into their contract. All these other guys, they're out there fighting for $2,500 a night. Yeah, that's crazy. On the undercard, and if you're lucky, you win a fight, and have a 50 and 50. You'll get 50,000 for the win and maybe a 50,000 for performance of the night. You might walk away with $100,000. When you put that into the boxing world, that's pennies.
I kind of thought that they would be closer to those bigger paydays by now, but it almost seems like it's going to be like another 10 years before they get to that level.
Yeah, I just, I really think that the UFC really does have a chokehold on the industry right now. It's such a young sport. Well, and you deal with these guys. I'm not saying they're not dumb by any means. Fighters are far from dumb, but they're hungry. They're the guys, in the early and mid 70s when boxing was at its heyday. They really are of that old mentality. Boxing, Don King came over and made it about money, and then it kind of went out of control. Now it's all about money, and we're giving up quality, and we got guys dodging fights just for $1 million paydays. The MMA world is guys are, I don't care. All right, pay me $2,500. I just want to prove I'm best in the world. That's sometimes counterproductive to them getting to the point where they need to be, because certainly I think Dana as a businessman takes advantage of that mentality. And he doesn't really fight it. And in his interviews, he does it. Hey, you know what? The pay is what the pay is. If you want to be on the big show and be the best in the world, you can only come to us. Nobody else. Who cares if you're Joe Smo champion of some other? You got to be a UFC champion. A UFC champion that puts his life on the line every time he gets in the cage and knocks down $200,000 a year. That's crazy. Especially when they're knocking down huge money for the company itself. And love him or hate him, McGregor put it best when he asked for some leeway. If you can take everything as they sell, it seems like, and I can see that, he was being pressured into being the dancing monkey, which he said he does very well, but after a loss, he remembered that he was the fighter first, and I can fully see that. Your ego takes back over, and you go, you know what, I'm not going to be the damn dancing monkey for this. I'm going to train for this fight. I'm going to go back and redeem my reputation and show people what I can do. And they're like, oh, no, you're going to be the dancing monkey and promote it so we make a lot of money, and you'll make a lot of money too. At that point, he talks a lot about money. I don't really think he cared about the money he was going to make on the Diaz rematch. He wanted to show that he was going to go out and do to Diaz what Diaz did to him. He was going to humiliate him with his talent and go back to just caring about fighting, and the business aspect of the UFC wouldn't let that settle in. And I mean, he put out a tweet, it really just said, I don't think I was asking for too much, especially if every fighter has to do the press conference. Well, does everybody that's on that card earn this company $400 million in 8 months? I don't think so. I think that earned me a right to get a pass that maybe some of the other ones didn't. And you know what? I can't argue with that. If you made a company $400 million, you say, I'm going to do one press conference right before. The rest of the time, you're not going to see me. I'm going to show up to put on a huge performance, and you're going to have to be happy with that. But the business is tough right now.
Yeah, and there's probably a lot that we'll never know if they really talked before he no-showed for that conference, or if they knew he wasn't going to show, or if he if he tried to work it out of his contract. Like these things we're never going to know unless the UFC wants us to know them, and they'll probably they'll give us a marketing answer.
Well, the one thing that came out of that is that if you read between the lines, and I pride myself on kind of knowing the sport and knowing the business world too, if you read between the lines, I think you're going to see a huge change. And again, you can kind of thank McGregor for that as guys run into this. I think it said that you're required to do press to support the fight, which makes perfect sense as a business. But it never tells you what. It doesn't say you're going to be here April 27th, you're going to be there, here, and McGregor says, no, I was willing to do one press conference in New York. That covered my obligation. It says that you will do press to support the fight. I will do one right before the fight. I'll support it. People will tune in. I'm not doing 15 on a worldwide tour. because it wasn't broken down by individual ones, but I bet you it will be from here on out. I bet you Dana learned his lesson with that he's going to specify you're going to be available for anything we tell you to be available for.
Yeah, and that's it's probably a good problem to have, is to have to negotiate all these $1 million deals. So all right. So
listen, always love to have you at my shows. If you do break free with your schedule and can make it, by all means, you're more than welcome. We'll get you a VIP pass so you can report back on your next podcast and tell everybody how it made out. And if there's some delay in the stream, I'll send a DVD copy to you if you can't make it up.
Cool. I'm sure I'll know some people there, and I'll be on text messages if I don't make it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try and change my schedules to see if it's something I can do. But now, actually, in just checking over before I called you, I saw that it starts at 6, so I might be able to come for a little bit, and might have to just skip out early, which is always the tough part. But I've done it before.
Perfect. You're always welcome. You just give me a heads up if you're going to make it down.
All right, John, thank you very much. I appreciate all your time, and I wish you best of luck on the show.
Thanks, brother.
All right, man. Have a good night.
Good night.
Thank you. Bye.